everyone doing out there? How are you doing, Sonny? How are you doing, Victoria?
Sunny, you want to go first?
Sure.
Because we're
Uh,
happy to have you.
I'm back. I'm alive. Post COVID-19. It sucked, but I think I got off light, and here I'm back, and I feel back to normal. I miss you guys.
We miss you too. We're going to update your life insurance and insert our names just in case.
it's in the middle drawer of my office, at my desk in my office, just in case someone needs to find it. I should probably get two more. The way insurance companies play, they'll probably deny like two of the three, so at least one of them will hit when we file a claim.
Well, maybe make only one of us a beneficiary and the other one will sue just in case.
Noted.
I was kind of surprised, like when I read your will and you left like everything to Richard Gonzalez. Do you want to tell like our listeners like what's going on there?
It was captioned love of my life, partner in crime and all things.
I left it to Richard Gonzalez with a Z. That way the Richard Gonzalez with an S can't get anything.
Well, today we have a special guest with us, and we have a very morbid like topic, but it's something we have to talk about because it regards the current like situation that we're seeing with companies, businesses, and finances. It's a topic known as bankruptcy, and we have Jose Caso with us today. Also, do you prefer that we call you Jose, or can we just call you Pepe?
Pepe's fine.
I was going to say, who's Jose Caso? Are you using like a relative's computer? Because I only know you as Pepe.
And as the Anglos call you, Pipi.
Pipi. Okay.
So,
El Pipi Grande.
so Pepe, can you tell us like what is like bankruptcy?
So bankruptcy is a special remedy that's authorized by the United States Constitution to pretty much get all your debts and put them under the umbrella of one court, which is the bankruptcy court. It stops all collection remedies, all foreclosures, everything that is potentially adverse, lawsuits, and everything is organized pursuant to the rules of bankruptcy. So, we can break it up a little bit, but the long story short is it's a remedy that any U.S. citizen or resident can seek. And once you go down that route, it's a very specific route that's very structured and hopefully, will allow you to solve your issues.
But that's the main purpose, though, right? It's to assist you in solving your debt. And when I mean solving, I mean constructing a payment plan for your debt, right?
So there's for individuals, there's two types of bankruptcies, Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. Chapter 7 is called liquidation. And essentially what happens under that option is that you get all your non-exempt assets. So under the laws of the state of Texas, there's a list of things that are just exempted, like your house, your clothes, your guns.
Of course, your guns in Texas.
Of course, your cattle, your ranch, a lot of very Texan-y stuff, your vehicles. So essentially, most of the things that normal people have are exempt assets. And you turn those over to the Chapter 7 trustee. The Chapter 7 trustee liquidates your assets, pays all the creditors, pennies on the dollar. And, that concept of pennies on the dollar is, imagine that you owe $1,000, but you only have $100 in assets. And then everybody's going to get 10 cents on the dollar, meaning they're going to get 1/10 of whatever they were originally owed. And then the magic under Chapter 7 is that your debt is discharged and you start from scratch. And there's a lot of myths out there that once you file for bankruptcy, your credit score gets all messed up. But honestly, it's the other way around, because all these debts are bringing your credit score down. And when you finally do get the bankruptcy, you just go back right up. And that's a big challenge, because suddenly people who weren't getting credit cards file for bankruptcy. And then all these people are knocking at their door offering credit because they know that you can't file for bankruptcy again and that you're addicted to credit. So it's very tricky. It really is.
And why should
But
someone...
I think that is a common misconception. When you said there, the big misconception is that your credit gets killed and I speak loosely when I say killed, but your credit gets ruined or your credit score goes down significantly when you file bankruptcy. I remember that from high school. My senior year high school economics teacher told us, he goes, yeah, you can file for bankruptcy, but then your credit's shot for 10 years and you can't do anything. And I've always thought that was the case up until I went to law school. You're telling us that's not the case.
Well, that's not the case with regards to the credit score. And then with regards to, just like with any other filing, the bankruptcy court is always going to be discoverable because you could log on to the ECF, which is just the federal PACER website, and you can look up any bankruptcy that's been filed pretty much in modern history. And that's never going to go away. So a lot of, I guess, databases and all that collect that information and they just package it. So it's going to follow you forever. But credit score wise, it'll help. Discharging bad debt is going to help you. And there's a lot of laws out there that prohibit individuals from being discriminated against if they file for bankruptcy.
Okay, so a lot of people right now, one of their biggest concerns, and I know some people are getting maybe deferment right now or time to repay, but what about student loans? What happens with student loans in bankruptcy?
Right. So student loans right now are not dischargeable. That's a big problem. An option is to discharge all your debts other than pretty much child support, taxes, and student debt. And so that way you could refocus all of your money or whatever spare money you may have into paying those three debts. But there's some case law out there that some very specific types of student loans can be discharged, but as a general rule of thumb, taxes, child support, and student debt is not dischargeable.
And what do you mean by dischargeable?
So dischargeable means that the bankruptcy court has the authority to issue a discharge of debt, meaning that if you follow all the steps laid out in the bankruptcy code, the bankruptcy rules, then the final judgment is a discharge order where the bankruptcy court says all your unsecured debt is discharged. Of course, secured and unsecured debt is another important concept here. If there's a debt that is being secured by an item, it could be a house, furniture, a vehicle, then that's treated differently under bankruptcy than just normal unsecured debt, which is just debt that's issued to people like credit card debt. Or for example, if you go to the hospital and get some huge bill, that's unsecured debt.
Which people may be experiencing pretty high right now.
And that's a big one, right? They come at you with a huge hospital bill, 20, 30, 40 grand, and that's not within your ability, especially if you're older. And we see essentially the way Chapter 7 bankruptcy works, about once every couple of weeks, there's what they call the creditors hearings up in Harlingen. And you see a lot of older people that are there because they just didn't have insurance and they just need to delete, $90,000 or $100,000 debt for this one medical event that they had. And that's really sad. But I mean, that's one of the tools that are available.
And like, if someone comes like to you and they're considering like filing for bankruptcy, I mean, at what point does someone say, oh, okay, it's time to file for bankruptcy?
And it's hard to gauge. I get I get people coming in saying, hey, I owe $8,000 in unsecured debt. I want to file for bankruptcy, to people that owe hundreds, if not millions of dollars. And it differs. When somebody comes and says they owe $6,000 in bankruptcy, in debt, and they want to file for bankruptcy, first of all, it doesn't even make sense because they're going to end up spending like $2,000. That's 1/3 of the debt right there. And a lot of these creditors are willing to take pennies on the dollar. If you call them up and say, hey, look, let's start a payment plan. I owe you $2,000, but I'm going to pay you $800 over 10 months or whatever. They'll usually accept that. So a lot of times when it's smaller debts, I try to figure out if we can't, instead of me just trying to get that money and putting them in a bankruptcy when honestly the debt isn't that big, I try to work it out. Once it's in that sweet spot, maybe when it's like 80,000, maybe 100,000, and they just don't have the resources to whether they'll ever be able to pay that back. That's when I really think, okay, it's pretty much either bankruptcy or, what stresses most people out, honestly, is the very aggressive collectors, that they're calling them, sending letters, threatening them. And a lot of people think they're going to go to jail for not paying debt. So that's what the first thing I tell every client is that you're not going to go to jail. And man, you could just see life comes back to their body because they're, they were told by somebody that if they don't pay whatever, a cop is going to come pick them up.
Wow.
Yeah.
And isn't that illegal?
I was going to say, I don't think you can do that.
It's very
I think that's a bar exam. I think maybe I got that question wrong, but
and the problem is a lot of these entities are really amorphous. Like there's nobody, it's just a 1-800 number. I know that there's a lot of claims that you could potentially assert against them, but at the same time, they don't have a physical presence. All they are is just like some kind of like some company that bought the debt from somebody else, and it's really hard to go after them.
And
so if somebody wants to come and talk to you about bankruptcy and you say, look, it's like under 20 grand, you're going to end up spending more. Can they still talk to you about maybe handling like their creditors or the collection issues, or is that not something that
well, I guess it just depends on what your objectives are, because I guess the way it works in reality is there's all these creditors that are saying, hey, you owe me money, you owe me money, you owe me money. Out of that, only a handful of them are going to end up filing lawsuits.
Yeah.
And then they'll record those judgments, and those judgments are good for 10 years. So unless, and I tell people, unless you've got bank accounts where they can garnish your bank account, or unless they have maybe a dream of buying a house or selling property or something where having a judgment recorded against you affects you, maybe it's better to just let those debts pile up. And I know it's kind of like one of these urban myths, but after 10 years, they'll just disappear by law.
But for the sake of our listeners, let's go step by step into the process of bankruptcy, because I think we take for granted what we know because it's been carved into us, right? But the filing of an actual bankruptcy petition, and that's what you do, you file a petition for bankruptcy.
Right.
What does that do immediately when you file a bankruptcy petition?
Well, bankruptcy petition is about a 2 or 3 page document that essentially just asks you to identify yourself, who you are, where you live, your social security number, things like that. And then you go to the clerk of the bankruptcy court. Obviously, most of the time it's done, through online filings, but theoretically, you go and submit your fee and your petition to the court. And at that moment that you file, 2 things happen. First of all, there's something called the automatic stay comes into effect, which means that all collection remedies that are ongoing have to stop. And then there's a thing called the formation of the bankruptcy estate. So all your assets and all your debts get compiled into this thing that's going to be called the bankruptcy estate. And then the bankruptcy court is going to be in charge of going through the rules and procedures and determining how you're going to end up.
And that doesn't mean that your bankruptcy has been approved, right? Because the judge still has to approve your bankruptcy.
I mean, filing a bankruptcy, most cases that I see probably get dismissed in the first 10 days because of deficiencies in filings and things like that. Whenever it's like a pro se individual, meaning somebody who just files by themselves, or maybe an attorney that's not a seasoned bankruptcy attorney.
I had a question, and I don't even know where I heard this from or where I saw it from. Quite frankly, it probably was from TV. But how does it work with somebody if they do file for bankruptcy, like their actual, like the money that they have, like let's say in their bank account, are they given like an allowance, or is it that they have to get permission, like if they want to spend on something or need to spend on something? How does that work?
So that's interesting. So for example, if you file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, where your bank account is not an exempt asset, right? Then the money that's in your bank account is not fair game for you to go spend. So assume you have $10,000 in your bank account and you file for bankruptcy. That money belongs to the bankruptcy court. If you, or really to the bankruptcy estate. If you spend that money, now you owe the bankruptcy estate whatever money you spent.
Yeah, because I was thinking like some people may be like, oh, I have all this money saved, I want it to be protected. Let me kind of take care of these debts, and then I'm going to be going and spending money on bullshit or on whatever. And it's like, no,
bullshit.
it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and
you know, like a raptor or something, some type of nonsense.
there's a lot of rules that prevent you from paying insiders. So, you know, assume that I owe money to all three of you, but I just want to pay Sunny G.
You would pay
They're
Sunny
gonna,
G first.
no. You got to pay everybody evenly. You can't.
Everybody gets there.
Yeah, everybody. So
we each get our quarter.
So a lot of times people owe money to their family and then to like American Express, and they say, well, I've got 10 grand, let me pay off my brother, and then I'll file for bankruptcy, and that won't cut it.
And so, are you seeing an increase in the number of people that are filing for bankruptcy?
You know what? I really saw a huge stop, or like nobody filing for bankruptcy. Nobody was filing for bankruptcy when the first stay-at-home order happened, because that happened concurrently with pretty much all collection efforts stopping. And I think that most people search bankruptcy whenever very aggressive creditors come to either take your house, take your car, or just bother you. So I think as people were incurring debt, but nothing was happening, and the law didn't really allow any remedies. So there was a big stop. And then when the collection started, man, everything just exploded. It's been Chapter 11s, Chapter 13s, Chapter 7s, just left and right, everywhere.
Do you think there's going to be, well, now that we're past the stimulus checks and the stimulus packages to the businesses, do you predict we're going to be seeing an influx in bankruptcy filings?
You know what? Probably. It just depends on the type of business. Like, I think of my law firm, and I don't necessarily carry a lot of debt. Maybe a couple of experts here and there and things like that. But there's certain type of industries, like for example, construction, which y'all are very familiar with, where you may have pieces of equipment that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and if you don't have work, you're not generating income to make those payments. Or farming, right?
Yeah.
People right now may not be buying food, or there may be an overstock of food, or with trade embargoes or whatnot, there isn't a market for you to sell your food, and you got to make that $100,000 on your Caterpillar that is critical for your business, because without that huge tractor or whatever, you can't farm. So Chapter 11 bankruptcies, I think, are structured for those scenarios, which are the businesses that have incurred a lot of debt and essentially need to change the way that they're structured. Right now, I can tell you that for the big stuff, there's one of my clients is one of the largest landowners of property in West Texas randomly, and this huge retailer that was leasing multiple businesses from him said, hey, we have about 200 locations in the United States, all over. It's one of these big box companies, and essentially, we're asking all of our landlords to waive rent for the next 4 months. If one single landlord doesn't waive rent for me, I'm going to file for bankruptcy. And that's the power of bankruptcy. All 200 landlords scattered, throughout the mighty United States gave in because they were so fearful of a bankruptcy filing.
I had a client in a similar situation. It was property owner, owns commercial property, has a big name renter, someone who you would never think, would need to file bankruptcy. And that's exactly what they told them.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you try to collect, we'll file bankruptcy. I was like, wow.
And there needs to be a consensus nationwide. And that just tells you that we made the decision internally, I think, regarding maybe 1 or 2 locations, but that means that there were 198 other conversations where people were saying like, nah, let's not go there because it's too difficult, or it'll be too challenging for everybody.
Mm-hmm. See, I had all the symptoms of COVID. I took a test like on day 4 of symptoms, but they didn't shove the swab all the way up to my brain. They just kind of like wiped the boogers around my nose. And I was like, I thought you were thought you were supposed to go deeper. but they didn't, and it came back negative, and so then I don't know, I felt like a wuss because I couldn't get out of bed, and if I would go, my symptoms were, my whole mouth went numb, couldn't taste anything for 2 days, and then I felt like I got hit in the head with a baseball bat. I had the worst headache ever, low grade fever. If I walked to the kitchen or if I walked anywhere, my heart rate would go up into like the 140s to 160s. Like I just ran a sprint or something. It was weird. My blood pressure is usually never high. I had like 155 over 111. And yeah, it took about 15 days to go back to normal. Yeah. But one of my best friends from law school, he practices law in New York. He was really, really sick, and he tested negative twice and didn't test positive until the third test, is what he said.
Wow,
that's crazy.
Yeah, who knows?
Hey Pepe, where are you at right now? Are you like squatting in like an art museum or what's going on?
I was going to ask, I was like, are you at an art gallery? What's going on there?
He painted all those himself.
My mom's beautiful art.
Oh, your mom's an artist?
Yes. Great artist.
Nice.
What's her name?
Alma Caso, right here.
Is that a cheesecake behind your shoulder? No, it's a table.
Oh. The cheesecake, really, Sonny?
I'm sorry. There's a portrait of me.
Oh, show us the portrait.
I was like, I hate to tell you, Pepper, that looks like dogs.
You're.
I was back when I had the long flowing hair, man.
You were kind of dark back in the day.
Had long hair.
A lot of soccer.
You guys ever get like some animosity when you think about all the shit that we've gone through during our lives? Like 9/11, right? Boom, the economy gets slammed, right? Most of us, are in college or getting out of college. And then we go to law school and we're like, yeah, now we're going to, we're going to be on top. And then boom, the financial mortgage crisis
And then
hits.
you realize that they just lied to you all those years.
Lehman Brothers happens.
And then here we are 10 years out where we're just getting our practices going and, we're doing good and boom, COVID-19.
Yeah. You know what though? I was talking about this too. This past weekend, I took my younger cousin to visit the college that she's going to. And she was kind of bummed out before about going. She was thinking about just like staying home. And I was thinking about how I felt when I was getting ready to leave for college. I was pumped. I was like, I am leaving. I'm ready to move out of the house. I'm going to go do my own thing. And the experience that they're going to have now, like college students who are still going, it's just not what they thought they were signing up for. I mean, and I'm like, hey, well, you can focus on your education, which is the real reason why you're going to go. But it's like, that's not why anybody goes away. Come on, and it sucks because it's just like, their high school graduations, their senior year got screwed. And it's going into their first year of college. And it's like, they're not maybe going to get like the tailgate, like to tailgate, the football game experiences, the organizations and all that stuff, the parties. And it just, man, like we got a shit end of the stick, but I just feel real bad for them. And I'm like, dude, just make the best of it. Like, at least y'all have all the social media. Cause I think if this happened to us, like when we were going to college, we didn't know anybody. I mean, what did we have? Like AIM? You could, instant message some people on AOL and try to figure things out. But, now they have like Instagram and Snap, and they have a group like where they can meet, online and talk to other prospective students. But
I thought
like it just sucks.
I thought I was very tech savvy because my AIM profile had a black background with like highlighter colored letters.
You know what? I have to say that having gone through the 2008 recession made our generation really cautious about just incurring crazy debt. And
great.
I think that people who were in our same position would all have $600,000 homes because they could make the minimum payment, and they would go get Escalades because they could make the minimum payment, and they could go get that, boat at the island because they could make the minimum payment.
Sunny,
Sunny.
like full house boat.
Everything. Energy special though. I think us normal ones. No, but all kidding aside, the reason why we can I think we're okay is because we don't have these tremendous debts. Imagine if, I think everybody probably had at least a part of their market, slowed down. For me, the people who were calling me and all that really slowed down.
Yeah.
Some of my other work picked up, but if you have these huge debts that just come at you month to month to month, and they pretty much force you to be generating like a very high income for the next 30 years, that's probably not feasible. And I think we've learned that.
Yeah.
I
No,
think we're also more technologically savvy to where we don't have to incur a lot of the overhead that the past generations did in order to operate. I think that's a huge help too. And we're not willing to take it on. We're not, I think of some of my clients, and they just have, big monstrous operations, and you think of how they could be smaller, and how they could keep, I'm not a financial planner, but I think of it in terms of like what I do. Like, why would I want to take on, hire a bunch of lawyers and have to figure out how to pay for their salary,
yeah.
and then feel like I can never leave.
Yeah, to me, it was also like at some point I had 7 employees, paying them about $10 an hour. So every hour of my day, I just felt like, am I generating $70 this moment to justify these 7 human beings that I have, right? And that was just my thought process. Like, if I was away for 2 or 3 days, I'm like, man, are these guys generating $70 an hour worth of work, or how am I going to make up for that lost time when it's only me? And so I've found it better to have a smaller staff, just because you just have to generate so much money that it's stressful to the payroll. I mean, that was my biggest concern for like the last year and a half, until I chose to kind of slim down a lot of that. And
I think I'm not sure if we're millennials or we're Xennials. It's like the generation right before millennials. But I think the criticism is that we don't have the guts to like take on big overhead and big debt. And I was like, well, no, we lived through 2008, saw what could happen.
We're smarter than that. No, I mean, I think we do see it, not necessarily. I think people do it in all different generations, but like you see some people who are like living so far outside their means, it's like one bad month could really kill like what you're going on. And this, what has happened like in the last couple of months, it really just showed like I'm very, very lucky that I've always lived like well under like my means. Like I've never been like a huge spender, and I'm always really cautious, very conservative when it comes to like if it's business expenses or even just like regular, like just like buying like crap that I don't need. But yeah, I remember, they're resetting all like court hearings. It's only like jail cases. And so like criminal clients, like that getting retained has gone down a little bit. Civil cases, it's hard to push a lot of them, that's, gone down a little bit. And so now you're kind of looking, you're like, okay, like what's making money right now? What can we do? And it's crazy. It's really, really crazy.
I know a guy who bought a Raptor right before this pandemic.
Idiot. But just for the record, though, none of us have had the need to resort to the oldest profession, right?
I think we need to check with Richie. But otherwise, I
paid for it.
I have a question for you, man.
Yeah.
When they say that something is too big to fail, are they talking about like a business, or is it something else? I'm not sure.
When they say too big to fail, that was my nickname in high school.
Efra, too big to fail, Molina. No, but that concept of the too big to fail, I think is also like it's like us. We really are. We represent our local businesses and our local entities, but very few of them are too big to fail. Even when we look at the biggest local companies, like they publish the list of the PPP recipients that received, a lot of money, And
Yeah, I saw that whole list.
and it's
Whose name was not on there? Mine.
right. You can still get it, I think. No, it's pennies on the dollar compared to what these huge companies, generate. So it seems like these law firms that represent them, that represent the largest companies, have that kind of trickle down effect. That, hey, I'm representing entities that I can just build them and build them and build them and build them like crazy, and even in the worst moments, they're going to get bailed out, so I can keep billing them, or even just the being, the compliance aspect of it, and you just never stop. And with us, it's like we need to survive, but we also have to be watchful of our clients to make sure that they survive.
Wow.
Yep, exactly.
So Pepe, if people wanted to contact you, do you have a phone number, website?
First phone number is 433 Caso, 433 CASO, which is 2276. So 956-433-2276. The lines are open and ready to work.
I honestly thought you were gonna say 433 too big to fail.
That's Efrain's number.
That's F's
No.
high school.
Yeah.
That's the license plate on his Raptor.
What happened, dude?
Exactly. Too big to fail.
Too big to fail.
And the